Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. We are live here at here on LinkedIn. So come on in, stop by, check us out, and we're gonna get started soon. I know it takes some time for folks to get on. That's okay. Meanwhile, I am gathering my notes here. We have some pretty interesting concepts coming up. So get into this live stream, get yourself comfortable, get yourself your second cup of coffee if that's where you are right now. Just relax. We're going to start chatting in about 2 minutes or so. So come on in, come on in. We've got a couple of cool topics lined up today. We are going to be talking about uh, IBM Watson Health to kick things off. Everybody remembers IBM Watson that sort of kicked off the whole AI boom several years back. So we're going to talk about that. There was a story in the news around IBM putting up Watson Health up for sale. Again, they've been trying to offload this asset for a while. I think there are a lot of good lessons that we can take away from that story. And so I'm going to give you my thoughts, my commentary. We're going to break down that topic. And then we also have a special guest, Luke Smaul, who is going to be joining us in about 10 minutes or so. And we're going to be talking about his experience with digital transformation. Luke Smaul has a really cool background. He's the founder of a consultancy called Chakra, and he works with midsize OEMs around digital transformation. But he also has a wealth of experience from his days back at GE Digital. He stood up a number of professional services teams, which I think are really, really important. And when we talk about IBM Watson Health, you're going to see why I think professional services are so important. So he stood up a number of those teams. He's worked in some really interesting spaces like semiconductor manufacturing. And I've actually worked in semiconductor manufacturing as well. And I got to tell you, that is a whole nother ball game. I remember doing work with a client a couple of years back, and we got a factory tour of the fob where they manufacture the semiconductor chips, and it was amazing. Sort of this mix of robotics, manufacturing, automation, but also physics. If you know anything about how those chips are put together, the like how small everything is, how like you have to mix like the right amount of chemistry and engineering. It is amazing, and it's a super complicated space. So whenever I get to talk to anybody that has any experience in that realm, I am super excited. So we have Luke Smaul that's going to be joining us in a bit. So we're really excited about that. If you have any questions for Luke, feel free to drop them in the chat. We're going to keep it kind of interactive. So I'll stop every so often and we'll field questions from the audience. I'm going to want to talk to him about both the supply side of digital transformation. So what are the producers of software and platforms, what are they doing, but also the demand side in terms of what's the customer experience for a lot of these OEMs and manufacturers in getting out digital transformation. So we're going to have a really good conversation with Luke. I'm super excited about that. So definitely stay tuned. He should be joining us in about 10 minutes or so. But first, before we jump into our chat with Luke, let's look at this conversation that we had on LinkedIn around IBM Health. So you should be able to see this now. I'm going to bring myself here up to speed. So this was a nice little piece put up by Charles Martin. If you don't know him, he's a consultant that has a ton of experience based out of the Bay Area. Really sharp guy. You should follow Charles. He always has some really good topics and conversations going, and I feel like anytime, like, he also has like a great network, so you'll see that I asked a question to his network, and they just offered a ton of great information. So check out this feed here, and let me point you specifically to the what I'm talking about, and I'll post it here in the chat so you can see that. um Check that out. All right. Let's talk about IBM's Watson Health. So here's the story. Here's the story from Axios. Really good story. Big Blue, after spending billions of dollars, is trying to offload IBM Watson. They are looking for about $1 billion for the technology. This comes after IBM spent around $4 billion in terms of acquisitions in getting the Watson Health product line up and running. This is just mentioning acquisitions, but there's probably like a ton of R&D and expense that went into this, so it's probably higher. So they're trying to get $1 billion for an asset that they invested $4 billion in. So why is that? Why if it's AI, if it's a hot space like healthcare, how is it that they're only getting 25% of their original investment? This is coming on the heels of Oracle making a really big acquisition. They recently purchased Cerner for $28 billion. That's a lot of money. And Cerner is a major player in the electronic health record space. So the other company that you'll know in that space is Epic. Epic probably owns 75% of that market, and I'm guessing that Cerner is a number two in that space. It's interesting to me that there's such a tight it's such a tightly held market by Epic. Some interesting things there. So I think this is kind of an interesting story. I think it tells you a little bit about deploying AI to the enterprise. And also, there's another theme where we have to think about how we deploy AI to a space like the healthcare industry. So let's talk about some of the comments that we got here. So a lot of commentary around this being mostly sort of a marketing and sales push. I totally get that. IBM, there was a lot of buzz going on around IBM Watson. They made a big splash, and I think IBM was looking to get a lot of traction with the AI wave. They may have pushed the marketing a little bit too much, because once people buy into it, and then you have to deliver AI, that is the conundrum there. So that's I totally get that. So let me just summarize what the key themes here that I've seen from this conversation, and definitely jump on this thread and feel free to add to it. Feel free to take it in. But here is my basic summary in terms of why IBM was not able to get any traction, at least on the healthcare side. One is an underappreciation of how much work goes into getting data sets ready for AI. So you have a lot of work going on in AI. You do your training on clean data sets. You do your training with certain partners. And then when you try to roll that out, one of the first roadblocks that you hit is the fact that the quality of the data for the new prospect or new customer isn't up to par. This happens all the time. And in part, I think because a lot of your training, when you're developing these new products, they're usually with early adopters that have really good data and have really good leadership. But oftentimes what you'll find is that in the real world, there's also folks that don't have really good data. So that's group B, say for the sake of the the grouping. Group B does not have really high quality data. And then there's also people that don't have any data at all. There's group C that doesn't have any data at all. So you've trained your model on high quality data, and then you're rolling it out and you're finding that 80% of the market isn't where you thought it was going to be. And so as you're developing new AI products for enterprise, you have to keep that in mind. The question that you have to ask yourself is, what happens if my prospect doesn't have 50% of the features that I need to go into this model? And that's kind of, if you're a product manager, that's the question you got to be asking your data scientist. Like, okay, it works great for early adopter company number 2, but what happens if we test this against somebody that's been, that's a legacy type of company that maybe doesn't have the quality data? Can we still deliver the type of analytics and AI that we want to deliver? So that is a key point, comes up all the time. So just make sure that you kind of keep that in the back of your head as you're rolling out new AI and machine learning products. So let's talk specifically about healthcare. If you're going to be leveraging raw data that's coming from hospital networks, you have to appreciate that a lot of that data is not going to be of the highest quality and is going to be incomplete. I've worked with medical records and that type of data. A lot of it is in PDF form. So one of the first things that you have to do is you have to do OCR, and you have to extract the raw text. It's unformatted, so you have to put that together, and you have to kind of extract the features from it. That's a lot of work. You also have to add structure to it, so you may not get it in the nice tabular format that you might want. You might have to actually do that, put together the schema yourself, and it also might vary from source to source to source. So medical records are no joke. Those are that's really hard to get into. So just kind of appreciate that and be aware of that. Appreciate that you're going to have a lot of upfront data work, the data prep that has to happen, and you should bake that in. And why this is important is because you want to get your prospect ready for that. I think in part why IBM Watson Health didn't do so well was because the expectations were set so high. If you look at the marketing, the ads around it, you felt like as soon as you got IBM Watson, boom, you were going to get insights, you were going to get AI, you were going to get streamlined productivity. But that probably doesn't happen until a good 3, 6, 9 months of integration, data cleaning, training, and then you might get some of that. And you have to be committed to that in terms of the time and the expense. And a lot of companies just aren't ready for that. So if you're selling AI and machine learning, just try to set that expectation that, hey, there might be some time where we have to make sure that our models are going to work for your data. Let's kind of bake that in and try to set those expectations so that you can surprise to the upside when you are able to get your analytics up and running in a shorter period than you would have thought, and not surprised to the downside. So managing those clients' expectations is going to be really, really important. The last point that I want to touch on here is appreciating the fact that the healthcare system has somewhat of a unique business model. So in machine learning, you usually have inputs that you map to outputs. So the inputs go in your feature space. So you might have 10 different attributes, and that's your raw data. And then that's mapped to an output. What is the effect that you're trying to determine, predict, or get to? That is your outcome, your Y variable. So for example, if you're building a real estate model, your features or your inputs are going to be the number of bedrooms you have in a home, square feet, the location, zip code, things like that. And then your output is going to be the price that you're expecting for that particular home. That's how it should work. Now in healthcare, it's not very clear how that, where those, how those two match. So for example, your inputs, the services that you're providing to a patient, but do you really know the outcome? do you really know how healthy they got over a period of time? What are you trying to determine? Are you trying to determine the pain that they measure when they come in the next time? Are you trying to determine if they don't come in at all? Because if they're healthy, they might not come back into the hospital system. So that was great, but then how does that map to the inputs that you provided? That is really tricky. That is really tricky to navigate. So I think if you're going into the healthcare space, that is something that you have to appreciate. And in general, when you're developing AI for industry or for enterprise, you have to take into consideration the business structure of the organization and the ecosystem in which they're working, so that you can see whether or not it jives well with the traditional AI machine learning approach, especially when it comes to supervised learning. You can do some other things like unsupervised learning techniques, things like that. But most people are going to do supervised learning techniques, and that's the general framework for that. So hats off. Somebody mentioned that. I want to give them a shout out, Sean Wong. So good shout out. Thank you for bringing that up. And so check out that thread. Jump in there, comment, and let me know what you think about IBM Watson Health. Would you pay $1 billion for that? Is there a big opportunity for that? Should IBM Watson be selling to Oracle now to complete the merger of data with AI? Let me know what you think, and we'll continue to follow that story. All right. So let me get our super special guest on here on the program here, and I'll start sharing that. And there he is.
Hey, good morning.
How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
I am doing really, really well. We're just kicking off the show, warming up the crowd for you, Luke,
Oh,
talking
perfect.
about IBM Watson Health and what we can learn from IBM Watson and how they rolled out into enterprises. So really good thread that I've been tracking on LinkedIn. So I hope folks will check that out. But Luke, thanks for joining us today. Why don't we kick off by you giving us a little bit of introduction on yourself, your background, your company. Why don't we start there?
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Manny. Thanks for having me on. So I've been almost now, which is kind of scary to say, but over 22 years now in the industrial automation space. So started panels, wiring PLCs, kind of grew up with the stack, right? Moved up through into SCADA, historian, played with some S88 batch systems for a while, finished kind of up in the MES space. And as my skill set kind of grew in the stack, my career kind of grew as well. So I was moving around, ended up leaving GE after 13 years as a senior director, part of their digital transformation team. And through that career, really got to see the good, the bad, and the ugly of digital transformation. And digital transformation, I mean with a capital T, big transformation, not just digitization. And decided to launch my own firm when I'd finished that previous chapter, that previous journey through that industrial IoT stack, to really help companies navigate through the challenges, the realities, the pain points of big digital transformation. That's my firm now. That's Chakra. We're in business. It'll be almost 3 years in a couple of months. And we've helped think about big, heavy industrial companies. GE will be a good example. That's where I used to work. We haven't helped them yet. But older industrial companies, very reliant on sort of private, not private, but large capital sales to stay in business. And their business is at risk because of the big economic level digital transformation. So we're trying to help them navigate through that.
That's great. Thanks for that introduction. Luke, you mentioned you've been in the space for a long time. You've worked with SCADA. You've worked with rolling out historians. What about that trajectory in your career helps you now? How, and are there other ways that professionals have gotten to where you are that that are different? And what's the contrast there? What makes your career path unique, and why does that help you out today?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I see it now with the startups that are popping up. I think 4 or 5 years ago, we just assumed that we could connect a manufacturing plant to the cloud. And as if by magic, you'd have all the context, all the information you need, right? You talked previously on the live stream about getting data ready, getting data context ready, the amount of professional services involved in that. So what we're seeing now is startups start to fill that white space between the PLC level and the hyperscalers, right? The Azures, the AWSs, the Google Clouds, filling that white space, which was traditionally the realm of S95, not to get super technical, but just a standard that defines how you think about data inside the four walls of a plant and inside the four walls of an enterprise. So having grown up in that space, done it the old way, I can start to see now where these startups are starting to play, and also how we get data correctly from the machine level up to the cloud. That's where you want to do your processing. Do it in a careful, contextualized, thoughtful way, and don't lose sight that all that old technology, while it's old, it served a purpose. It was there for a reason. And even though we've got newer, more modern tech, there's no magic wand here. There's no magic way, even with AI, right? And Watson's a great example. Even with that level of horsepower, that you can't get rid of all that data context. It's just so important. And I think having lived that for almost 20 years now, in amongst those contextual layers, kind of gives you a unique point of view.
And how do you set that expectation with vendors and with clients? What do you have a process for talking about that to make sure that people appreciate that you do have to do a lot of data prep in advance, and that you have to consider the context and not rush to just putting everything on the cloud?
Yeah, and I always got to be careful because I don't want to scare people off, because this is a journey that you want to encourage people to go on, right?
That's right.
But at the same time, everything we do is all about starting small, learning as quickly as you can, failing fast if you need to, and growing into that context, learning that context in real time. So an example would be, hey, I'm a process engineer. These are the kind of people we try and help companies find inside their organization. Hey, I'm a process engineer. On my evenings and weekends, I've taught myself Python. I'm doing basic data science for the sake of my day job. But the way in which they do that, if you watch someone like a process engineer who's doing it for the sake of improving their day job versus going big bang, I'm going to go to the cloud, it's very incremental. It's very domain expertise heavy, and it's relying on real world context. So, hey, I've created an algorithm that I think predicts remaining useful life of a particular machine. If that machine does fail, can I actually go and see in the physical world, in the real world, what happened? And does it align with the failure mode I expected to see in my algorithm? They're the sort of stories we like to tell companies about what data science and big data and AI actually looks like, right? You want to get dirt under your fingernails. You want to be in with the machine. You want to be starting small. You want to be learning with the machine, learning with the domain experts. And then you can start to grow into something much, much bigger. And that story typically resonates well with our customers.
That is huge. Do you have a name for that type of person? Because I feel like all companies should be trying to find those folks within their organization, because in my experience, they have been the most valuable to rolling out AI products and services. As I went into these companies, I always try to find those folks, as you mentioned, that know the factory floor, that know the process, that know the machines, but also know a little bit about Python, know a little bit about MATLAB, and they just seem to be a wealth of knowledge. One, do you have a name for that type of individual? And B, how do you go about finding them?
Yeah, I think you got to be talking. You've got to be, whatever way you manage talent in your organization today, right? You've got to have a way to find your rock stars, those guys that are in a role, they're solid. They may not be constantly climbing the ladder, but they do an excellent job in the position they're in. So whatever way you manage talent today, whether there is a HR manager that you can go to and talk about, okay, who are the high performers? Who are the rock stars that every year continually just output a level of work that's above and beyond what we expect, right? And then you've got to find them inside the right departments. And it is typically reliability engineering, process design, all those departments. And just by the very nature of what's happened in industry, the very nature of why we're on this live stream, those rock stars will have found the tools. They will have started to adopt, like you said, even just basic MATLAB functionality to help them do their jobs. And I think it's just working with your talent team to figure out who those rock stars are.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Luke. And I think if you're a rock star and you're watching this stream or the video, you have to also raise your hand and say, hey, I know this space, I'm an expert, but I also know about data, coding, and I have an interest in Python and learning more. You have to raise your hand to those folks within your company that are leading innovation. So there's oftentimes like a digital officer, or there's an innovation leader that has some projects. You got to get on their radar. And also that innovation leader has to come to you for ideas and develop that relationship as well.
Exactly. And please, if you are watching and you are that rock star, don't lead with the technology, lead with the outcome. What have you done from an outcome perspective? And that's an overused word, but basically what that means is, how has this helped you do your job? If you lead with MATLAB, Python, MapR, Kafka, whatever technology buzzword, you're just going to sound the same as every other consultant and every other vendor that particular leader is talking to. But if you go and say, don't worry about the tech, but in my job, by leveraging newer technology, I've been able to predict A, B, C, or D, and this had this impact with these customers, that'll get their attention. Unfortunately, most people that are responsible for the digital transformation program or the AI program or the big data program, they're just inundated with technology and buzzwords, and they cannot see the wood for the trees. Right. So you've got to find a way to cut through that noise and show the outcome.
Yeah, that's a good point. You have to tie your technology, your data to something that the business cares about, because that digital officer also has to sell it to the board and to other leaders and has to get funding for those programs. And they have to convey that in the same way. They can't be leading with Python or big data. They have to frame it in how it's going to impact financial metrics for the business in a way that's understandable by a CEO and a COO.
Yeah. We had one customer. He was responsible for the whole enchilada, for the digital transformation of a multi-billion-dollar division. And he kept going to the board with huge architectures, with all the buzzwords you mentioned, saying, we're going to be a digitally enabled enterprise. We're going to have the best-in-class technology at every layer in our stack. And the board kept saying, so?
Why? You're right.
Yeah. Why? And that's the pushback. And thankfully, that's the pushback we're getting. I think 2016, 2017, when the heady days of digital transformation, I think, unfortunately, the board would have said, okay, here is money. Thankfully, that's changed. Thankfully, we're over the initial sort of early adopter hype phase of digital transformation and big data. And boards are pushing back and saying, no, what's this actually going to do for my business? And hopefully it can be about more than just saving money, which is kind of cool. My passion is, if we're using this technology correctly, we can actually generate revenue, create new value, right? And that's transformation with a capital T.
I think there's a lot to talk about there in terms of, do we try to save money with this technology, or do we position ourselves to create new revenue streams or to bolster our competitive positioning in the marketplace? So I definitely want to come back to that. Before we do, can you talk about how companies can go about getting these Rockstar, we'll call them Rockstars, that's Rockstar data folks, and how do we train them up, and how do we elevate them and get them more education and training? I say that because what I found is that a lot of these companies also have a hard time attracting data science talent and data engineering talent. And what I've seen some of the more successful companies do is they've actually been able to fill that need with engineers that can become data scientists. So people that studied mechanical engineering, and then you have them do some courses, and now they know Python. and then they become sort of some of your first data scientists. And I like that because you're training your people for a new skill set that's going to be important for the company, and it's super valuable for them. And you have really good subject matter expertise in that first team of data scientists that is absolutely critical for your data science function being successful. So I'm wondering if you've seen that in your experience, either with data science or other technical professions, where like you can't go out and get the talent, but maybe you can foster that talent within your organization. I'm wondering if you have any examples of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it. And the mantra that I use and I teach companies is data science is a mindset, not a qualification, right? It's all about that mindset. You know that. You know the people you work with.
Yep.
Data science is a relatively new discipline. The methodologies we use, the approach we take is an engineering approach. And that's been around for a very, very long time. And people have been using statistical analysis, basic algorithms in their day jobs for years. So it's all about defining that mindset. What is the mindset of a... Sorry.
No worries.
We're definitely live when my
Definitely
phone...
live, folks.
Yeah. You think I would have silenced that? Oh, well, rookie mistake. So it's all about that mindset, and can you define that mindset and then go find those people? And when you do find those people, this is literally the conversation I had with one of these rock stars. We were sitting in an office. We were in Taiwan at the time. It was myself, one of these rock stars, and the VP that was overseeing the whole enchilada, the whole transformation of this business. I basically said to this guy, and this is a trick, don't go to them with, here's how we're going to do digital transformation. Here's how we're going to define our architecture. You need to start learning Kafka, or you need to start learning X, Y, or Z. The conversation was, we want to take to market. This is what we're doing with this particular person. We want to take to market the success that you've had. That is transformational for this business. And you just tell us what you need. And if it's people or money, you quite literally have a blank check, right? And if you think about going out and hiring, this is what I was talking to the VP about ahead of time, before we made that kind of a promise to someone with a blank check. If you were to go out and hire that particular person with a data science qualification, a data science title, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to hire that person. Let alone if you were to go and start purchasing some of the software they'd probably need to get going. We have someone doing it almost for free, right? In the balance of cash in the company, almost doing it for free. They're doing it for you they're almost in their spare time. There is nothing they're going to ask for that is too expensive or going to scare you in terms of a check. And in the end, the chap needed a $3,000 MATLAB license to take it to the next phase, right? And the reason we were all in Taiwan at the time, we were meeting with a customer to literally sell the output of the algorithm he had built the previous year using duct tape and baling wire. So it's going having those conversations with these people and just saying, what do you need, right? And we got him more people. We elevated him from, kind of made it official that he was basically the head of the data science team. And in fact, we've not finished that project, but I've stayed in touch and I've watched the guy go from strength to strength. He's now a people leader. He's got his team. He's driving data science. And it was all about just recognizing that mindset from day one.
No, that's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. I just think there's so much opportunity for these folks. Everybody wins. The Rockstar wins. The company wins. And I really like early data scientist leaders that know the space, because that's something you can't replace. I can teach someone Python and R and all, the big data technologies, but to replicate 10 years of being a process engineer or mechanical engineer and knowing a space and a factory line, like that's much harder to teach. So I think for companies, as think about that, like, what's easy for me to augment a motivated individual with and what's not. And I think you'll find your story, Luke, really resonates there. We talked about the value of AI, analytics, digital transformation around being one of two objects, either saving money or generating more revenue. And it seems like you have like a really strong opinion on that front. And maybe you can elaborate a little bit more, but you mentioned, people are going after saving money. That's okay. But really what you really want to be doing is positioning yourself to increase the top line, the revenue. Can you talk about that? Where does that come from, and how do you see companies doing that well?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. The passion I have, and the reason I have the firm, is because of the history of digital transformation. There's a reason why we're on this live stream talking about AI and big data and the impact it's having on industry. And it goes back 10, 15 years, almost, around 2007 is one of the big milestones I always like to talk about. That's where you see things like the iPhones coming out. Facebook, from a social media perspective, leaves college campuses and goes mainstream. AWS launch. You've got Hadoop came out around the same time, right? For the non-technical folks, that's just a big data architecture that Google used a version of, or Google basically let people know how they did some of their magic from a big data perspective, and Hadoop leveraged that and said, hey, for the world, here is a big data architecture you can use so you can be like a Google. So you take all of that big data, analytics, social media, mobility, and then you watch what happens at an economic level. And you start to see companies, the big companies that we all used to invest in, the GEs, the Berkshire Hathaways, oil and gas firms, start to fall off the top spots from a valuation perspective, right? You get, I think you mentioned this before in one of your live streams, Mark Andreessen writes the famous article or the famous white paper that software is eating the world. That's around, I think that was 2016, 2015, he wrote that article. Right. Around the same time, Warren Buffett points out all the platforms, all of these big, the FANG, right, the Facebooks, the Amazons, the Netflix, the Googles, are taking over the top spots from a valuation perspective from traditional industrial companies. And that is an economic level shift. So to answer your question in a very long-winded way, you've got to put the future of your business in context of that history and ask yourself, where do we need to be? Not even where do we want to be? Where do we need to be in some cases, probably where should have we been 2 years ago? But where do we need to be in 2, 5, 10 years? Taking that history on board, taking that context on board, extrapolating that into all the stuff we're hearing about Web3, the metaverse, all that crazy hype, and it is hype, but there's no smoke without fire, right? And then you can answer the question, should we be saving money or creating net new revenue? But that's the level you've got to have the conversation at. You've got to get the context of the history right. You've got to put that in comparison to why customers or companies buy from you today. And then you can answer that question in a very meaningful way, and then go do your digital transformation. But don't just go save money and think, if I save money today, I'll be a stronger company tomorrow. That's not always the case.
That's a good point, because yeah, you're right. If you look at the valuation for some of the most valuable companies, Amazon, Facebook, Tesla, it's really based on what they expect to do in the future. Like all of that, like 80% of the value comes from what Tesla's going to do in 5 years, 10 years. And a lot of that is going to be around revenue services that come from these technologies. So in a similar way, you have to appreciate that. That's a great way to I think frame it, that history. And then how far into the future are you looking? Are you looking 2 years, 5 years? What's a good kind of time frame for leaders to be targeting?
Yeah, how we talk about that with our customers is 3 time horizons, and it depends on the business what the actual number of years are, but it's now, next, and future. What do we need to do now so that we're surviving and laying the foundation to thrive in the future? Right, make sure that's shored up correctly. That's the right time horizon. Next, okay, that's probably 2 to 3 years. What should the stuff we're doing now translate into for our customers in the next time horizon? And then future is the big picture stuff. Like I said, there's not smoke without fire. So if we understand the history of what happened with the first wave of digital transformation, and we start looking at future trends, right? The future of AI, the future of Web3, the future of things like the metaverse. And I know some people watching this or watching me will be punching me virtually if I start talking about the metaverse. But look at some of these trends and look at these are smoke signals for the future. What's the fire that's driving them? And what can that mean for the future of your business?
That makes sense. And look, can you talk a little bit about, for the companies that are really doing digital transformation well, what are some of the attributes and common factors that you see within those companies? Is it leadership is really locked in? Do they already have like a really strong IT group in place? Are they in particular industries? Are they growing? What are some of the attributes that you're seeing for some of the companies that are doing digital transformation well?
Yeah, it's got to be of the two or three you mentioned. There's a good juxtaposition. So I don't care the state of the IT department. You can, that's so easy to fix,
Mm,
relatively speaking, compared to leadership buy-in. So it's got to start with leadership buy-in, and it's got to have the context, that history we talked about. You've got to have the board and the C-suite ready to have a conversation about what's our superpower as a company today and what will it be in the future. If you can get people on board with that, and then most importantly, and this is where we've driven huge transformation with some clients, you've got to have consistency of leadership. Too often these companies, especially the Fortune 500s, it's a constant reshuffle as they try and figure out their new strategy, and you can't keep a VP engaged for long enough. And this stuff, right, you talked about Watson, for example, and just even getting ready for something like Watson is 3, 6, 12, 9 months. That's a lot of quarters for a publicly traded company. That's a lot of change for a publicly traded company. So I'm looking for the companies that are setting a strategy at the board level, the C-suite's on board, and then they're giving this to a VP who they know is going to stick around, and they're not going to change that seat out in 3 months or 6 months or even 12 months. If you can get that in place, and you got some smart people that you can help you figure out your IT or your OT strategy, that stuff is easy, right? So it's people, it's all about the people, and it's people at the top. It has to start with them. Then you got to go and get the troops on board. You got to get your core team. So we typically run an incubator model. So I get the luxury of having taken a small group of people outside of the core business, and they report into Chakra, into my firm. And we run them like a startup and go get this stuff done. And then the last piece, if you can get the top down buy-in, focus on the people. When you're focusing on people, and you see a lot of, people, process, and technology stuff on LinkedIn, you see a lot of people talk about that. When you talk about people, don't forget some of the most important people in your business are your customers.
right.
So where that top level buy-in, where that level of support has to kind of meet the road from a go do it perspective is with your customers. So it's companies that are willing to have that strategy, have the context, grounded in a go do it team, and then have the confidence to go have early conversations, really early conversations with your customers about what digital transformation means. And that's hard, right? We're talking about companies that traditionally take 3 to 5 years to release a new product. And only when it's on the shelf and shiny and perfect will they go talk to customers about it. I'm saying we don't even know what digital transformation means yet, but let's go have a conversation with your customers about it and see what it means to them. That's a hard mindset shift, but if you can get that mindset shift and the right power behind it, you can do great things.
That is spot on, and I think that definitely resonates for me and some of the companies that I've been working with, coming from a technology background. So I was at a startup, and that just this is common knowledge. It feels like just like it's like everybody does that in the tech startup space. And when I went and I started working directly with manufacturers, that's not the case there. They have these long product cycles, and there's not a ton of interaction with the end customers. And I had to sit down and have that conversation with them and say, like, no, you have to continually go back and show what you're working on and get the signal from the customer in terms of whether or not you're on the right track and whether or not you're prioritizing the things that you think are important, and whether or not your hypotheses are correct there. So I think that is a really good point, Luke. You have to drill it into folks like, hey, you have to go and talk to your customer and get that valuable data. Another point that you're bringing up is the speed of innovation. I mean, I think that is one of the key metrics that you have to monitor as an organization. How fast are you cycling through projects, innovations, and products? Because that to me is one of the best indicators of how good you're going to be positioned for further digitization and data, is how quickly you can take information and make changes to your products. Can you talk a little bit more about that? How does a company speed up their innovation cycle? Do you have any good tidbits there? Any examples that you want to share?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we talked about with how one of the rock stars that we keep going back to, how they put themselves forward in the company, which is all about don't talk about the tech, talk about the outcomes. It's the same from a customer facing perspective. If you're going to go talk about innovation and speed up innovation and speed up how you drive that conversation, if you can ground it in real metrics, right? And for manufacturers, that's typically, quality, cost, delivery, safety, and sustainability. If you can ground what you're doing in those sort of metrics, go have a conversation with your customers today about, hey, here's how I manage my business. Before a part reaches you, before a machine reaches you, and I'm thinking about a machine builder, right, who sells a machine into another factory. Before that machine reaches you, inside my factory, here's the things I care about. What are the things that you care about on the same sort of scorecard? And if you're talking quality, cost, delivery, safety, sustainability, you're going to have very similar scorecards, at least from a what are the metrics we're focused on perspective. And then you say to that same person, everything that I'm doing now is going to improve those scorecards, those metrics. But if I do improve those, we need to probably exchange value in new ways. Like, we can't just be the same old, hey, I'm going to sell you a machine and you're going to give me dollars and the machine is going to arrive and we're going to be done. That relationship is going to probably change. This is back to, you're going to be creating new value. You can't just be saving money for the sake of saving money. If you can ground it in those metrics, it's much easier then to innovate in a faster way, because you're not going back to them and saying, oh, hey, I got a new version of some AI platform. Where you're going back on a quarterly basis and saying, we've moved the needle on these metrics. We've done that in innovative ways. We're on a path to something big, which is where the conversation around value is going to have to change. But in the meantime, I'm just improving these metrics. And what you find is the whole idea of innovation changes. You widen the innovation umbrella to cover everything that anybody is doing to improve those metrics. And innovation, it doesn't have to be shiny and new. Innovation can be, back to our Rockstar, people who are just being innovative in how to do their day job to improve the overall metrics of the business. And then you'll start to see innovation speed up because people get it. They're like, oh, it's not just about one team who's got the latest technology and they're using, augmented reality to do super cool Star Trek type stuff. Innovation is about helping our customers in innovative ways. Here's the metrics we can all agree to. Oh, I can impact those metrics. I can impact those metrics in my day job, and I can do it in a fast way. That's a much more interesting conversation than innovation equals shiny new tech.
Right. I really like that framing, because you're essentially telling your company how, what the scoreboard looks like, or what they need to do to put points up on the board. And however you go about doing that, fine, go and do it, and just let us know. We get those numbers up, you get credit for it, and we can also leverage that to increase our the value that we're providing to our customer and show them how we're doing that, and thereby changing the business relationship in terms of how we're working with those suppliers or those customers. I think the change in the business relationships, that's pretty interesting. I think that's new for a lot of my clients. So now that my clients are generating data and they need data from somebody else, there needs to be a sort of a new arrangement that has to be put in place. Any thoughts there in terms of navigating that transition in a relationship, particularly when it comes to data and analytics?
Yeah, it's so perfect, and it's another passion of mine and why I started the company. If we're talking data and analytics, and if we imagine an end-to-end supply chain, including suppliers and consumers. So, hey, I build a machine today and it goes into a plant tomorrow. The relationship that exists today between suppliers and consumers, between a machine builder and a factory owner operator, there is a value firewall between those two players. There is very little chance that there is the type of relationship today that's going to allow open sharing of data. And the reason is the machine arrives, it has to run to a certain spec. If it doesn't, it's a warranty issue. And it's a contentious relationship from day one, from when you accept the machine into the factory, from when the warranty period ends, from when the service team that are from the original supplier probably finish up and if they move to a third party or local supplier of service. It's an ongoing contentious relationship, and data is some of the ammunition that both sides of that conversation use to procure and then manage that relationship long term. So if we're saying, I want to now share data, I want to be open about data, the relationship that exists today does not allow that sharing of data. And I've seen this time and again. So you've got to get past the people that manage those contracts today. You got to get to the senior levels. You've got to have the conversation around, here's the core metrics that I actually use to manage how my machine arrives into your factory. And I'm going to improve those metrics in the future. But if we continue to just be contentious around data, it's not going to work. So then you've got to start changing the business model. And that's where, we could do a whole other live stream on this, that's where performance-based contracts, come in. Because what you're basically going to say is, let's stop being contentious. If you give me the data and let me manage the contract, I'll guarantee a level of performance. And if I miss that, there's a penalty. But if I hit it, there's a reward. And then they're incentivized to share data back to you. And that's where the whole conversation opens up, and you can get to a very, very speedy type of innovation with your end customer.
And when it comes to the supplier versus the buyer, what do you get as a supplier? What do you get as a buyer in that relationship, in that new relationship where you've breached that value wall, which I love that term, the value wall, breach the value wall. In that new arrangement that's performance-based, what does each party get? How do they benefit?
So the first, as a supplier, the first thing you get is you're protecting yourself from the economic level, seismic digital transformation that's happening in the world. And what I mean by that is, if you look at all those platform-based companies, if you look at that as one risk, you look at things like commoditization based on competitors out of regions like China. By having a performance-based contract, what I teach companies is, the reason companies buy from you today is because you design the best, you make the best product, you design the best product, you make the best product, you sell it the best, you service it the best. But the only place where a transaction happens is on that sale, and you get dollars back in return for that equipment. If we can keep the whole pie, the whole value pie of your business together, then it's very hard for people to compete against you, whether they're a AI startup who wants to go after your service business, or they're a competitor out of a lower cost region somewhere in the East, right? If you can keep that value pie together as a supplier, there's huge value to move into performance-based contracts or outcome-based contracts. As the buyer, you can eventually stop buying equipment, right? And one of the examples I'm thinking about that we have a company with, we were in the semiconductor business. I don't know how much, if you know how much a semiconductor plant takes to build.
I've done the fab tour and everything. It is crazy. It's like 2 football fields full of robots, and it's like super expensive capital expenditure. I totally appreciate that.
Right. It's like $10 to $15 billion to build a plant, right?
Yes.
And hopefully you do a good job and you get it correct and it all works. But in reality, we've all worked in a shop floor environment. The ramp up, and semiconductor companies are measured on their ramp up, how quickly they can actually produce at scale in an economic way the latest technology that they promised to Wall Street. So if you no longer have to put the risk into that as a buyer of all the capital expenditure, and you just buy output from the machine, pick a raw material, pick a metric that, say for vacuum, for argument's sake, you need vacuum conditions for your clean room. I'm just going to buy vacuum. I'm not going to buy all the equipment that supports that. That's hugely valuable to the buyer. And both parties can actually win. Then you've got the supplier who's keeping their whole value pie together, much more entrenched and much more protected from a competitor perspective. And then you've got the buyer who's able to work in much more flexible ways and not put these huge capital bets down on their machinery.
That is an excellent point. Yeah, to the extent that you can minimize your capital spend on these projects, that goes a long way. I know a lot of CFOs really care about that. So you nailed it. That's a great selling point for the buyers. We talked a lot about the implementers of digital transformation, the OEMs, why they're going to be benefiting, what they're doing well, what they're doing wrong. Can you talk a little bit about the supply side of digital transformation? So I'm thinking about the platforms, the hyperscalers, the people that are providing services. What are they doing well? What are they doing not so well in terms of making the digital transformation experience really be the best possible experience for these OEMs and these manufacturers?
Yeah, I think it's time to stop with the BS and the hype. And I think I'm going to do another live stream next week with the folks at Clarify. We can post details later on how to get access to that. But it's the title is Calling BS on Industrial IoT. This all kicked off around 2016, right? If we go back to the history, once the big platform players, I'm not going to name any of them in case I get in trouble, but all the different three-letter acronyms that own industrial IoT platforms, they all came from an older world, right? They were either an ERP provider or they were an industrial automation provider or similar. And they just rebranded everything under the heading of industrial IoT, which honestly is a smart thing to do, right? If you got to sell your widget, you better be named the right trendy thing. But it's just put so much hype and confusion in the market. And I'm glad to see where you went through kind of the realities of Watson this morning. There needs to be more thought leadership like that, where we're talking about, look, industrial IoT, I think, is a misused term. I think we've actually misdefined it. And again, I'm going to do a whole live stream on this next week where we talk about the internet part of industrial IoT is actually missing, right? There's no internet yet, I would argue. If you use an internet to connect to the cloud, it doesn't count. But think about the internet in terms of openness to sharing of data. So I think on the supply side, we've got to stop with the hype. We've got to stop talking terminology and buzzwords, right? I just watched a video this morning about Industry 5.0, and I'm worn out from Industry 4.0. What I tell people is only engineers would try and define a revolution before it's happened, right? You don't get to do that, engineers, right? We don't know what Industry 4.0 is going to mean. That's the fourth industrial revolution. Right. We're going to go back in history in 10 years' time, and hopefully then we can define it. But all those buzzwords, Industry 4.0, Industry 5.0, Industrial IoT, hyperscale, you name it. I don't care, my customers don't care. What my customers care about, and this is going out to all the vendors that are trying to supply to those OEMs, those heavy industrials that I work with, they care about outcomes again. What does it actually do? And then if it's leveraging newer technology, how is it doing it differently? So much of what I see out there, we've done 20 years ago. Back at the start of my career, we were doing some of this stuff. Right? Connecting to the internet is not new. Getting data off machines in lean, mean, interesting ways is not new. So if you're going to come with an offering, you've got to first of all lead with outcomes. What's the actual value? And then you got to tell me and tell my customers, how is this different? How am I obtaining that value in net new ways? And how does that align with the big transformation with a capital T that we're seeing happening in the market? Because there is an absolute risk, right? If you are a buyer of this technology and you place the wrong bet, and you're putting the strategy of your business firmly on this bet, you can get it wrong. You can get it horribly wrong, and it can cost you a fortune. and you can lose out on what's the potential we're talking about. So I think the ask, and where I'm seeing companies do it well, and I'm seeing startups do this really well now, is they're parking all the tech. You probably can't see it on the live stream, but that poster behind me says it's not about technology, right? That's digital transformation, not about technology. This is what these vendors are realizing. If you've really got the best technology, if you've really got the coolest stuff, if it's really industrial IoT ready and industry 4.0 approved and industry 5.0 ready, fine. But what's the outcome? How is that different, and what's the value it's driving?
Are there startups or larger companies that are doing that particularly well, in your opinion, that you maybe want to point to as an example of how to do this well? To your point, lead with outcomes, and then talk about how your technology is going to get those outcomes differently. Are there any companies that come to mind when you say, like, yeah, they're doing it really, really well in terms of their positioning and their marketing?
Yeah, and I'll talk about. I'm not going to make a recommendation on go buy someone's technology. That's not the question you're asking, right? You're just saying from a positioning perspective, who does a good job with outcomes and helping companies kind of navigate this?
Right, totally.
So I think one of the best in class at that is PTC. Right, PTC figured out early on in this journey that if you own the PLM, right, the product lifecycle management suite of software, and we're all getting excited about digital twins and digital threads, if you already own the 3D image, the 3D mock-up, the 3D entity of a product in the PLM, and you've got some CAD CAM software, you can plug all of the other elements of a digital thread strategy, industrial IoT from something like a ThingWorks perspective. There's a Vuforia, I forget what their AR platform is, but you can plug all this stuff on top of that, and it just looks great. And what that's enabled them to do is tell one of the most compelling stories about how all the technology feeds into a full-scale digital transformation. And backing that up, they do an excellent job with companies like L&S Research to put out papers on the outcomes this can deliver. So they are again, I'm not making a technology recommendation here. I'm making a pure thought leadership recommendation. Go follow them, get on their website, download every white paper they write. They do a great job of getting into things like HBR with their CEO and writing extensively about the future of digital transformation, industrial IoT, etc. So I think they do a great job, and then we can talk offline about how good or not their tech is.
I think that's right, Luke. As I survey my customers, PTC is up there as probably one of the more popular IIoT platform options. And it's funny because you're mentioning that they started with diagrams and CAD, and I didn't know that about their history. I just know them as an IoT platform for data because I think that's what they've transformed into. But I think you raised a good point. They started with the design and the PLC, the PLM, and now they've added components to that to support that and have grown into this new space, which is really interesting.
Oh, and I love it. I see it now. I was on a forum this morning, and people were talking about digital threads, digital twins, and I want to make a digital twin of something. And the mock-up they showed was a 3D CAD model of an asset. It's like, I can't even think of how long I've been out of college, but it's probably about 20 years. Like, we were drawing those 3D images in college 20 years ago. We didn't call it a digital twin. But right. PTC were smart enough to know if anything's going to be a digital twin, if anything's going to win that definition over, it's going to be a nice, sexy looking 3D rendering of an asset. And if you can do that, and if you own the PLM, if you own that product, that 3D rendering of that product from a platform perspective, then if you're going to showcase industrial IoT technology, AR technology, there is nothing better than that sexy 3D rendering of that particular product to do it with. And that's where they tell such a compelling story. And they back it up with good thought leadership. And again, I'm not going to make a tech recommendation because I try and stay away from making hard and fast tech recommendations or not. But yeah, they nail it from a thought leadership perspective.
That's a great example. I really appreciate that. So again, just to recap, if you're selling AI or IoT, digital transformation. Stay focused on the outcomes. Think about how your technology is doing something differently, and really get out there with thought leadership that resonates with those 2 points to win the market dominance. So I think that's a really good framework. Luke, anything else that you want to talk about that I haven't covered?
No, I think we could talk about digital transformation for hours, but no, I think this has been great. I think we've covered some of the big topics.
And now a little bit more of a personal question, Luke. I know you are the father of 2, so am I. I think we have our kids around the same age. What is the advice that you would have given to yourself before having kids? Any tactics that you would share for new dads now that you're a little bit more experienced?
Well, it's funny. First of all, I'm looking at myself on camera, and I can feel the lack of sleep that I got last night. But I was talking to my brother. My brother turns 40 actually today. I doubt he's on, but if he is, happy birthday, James.
Happy birthday, James.
He's old like me now. It's funny that 2-year gap, we're 2 years apart, felt like he was really my younger brother until he turned 40. Now, like 40 versus 42, you're basically the same age.
Yeah, it's around an error.
Yeah, he's old exactly. He's around an hour. He's old like me now. So I was talking to him, and the one thing we were talking about was travel, right? And he was talking about maybe where would he go this year from a travel perspective. His wife is Brazilian, and they were maybe talking about going back there, or he was worried about the long haul flights. I said, just go enjoy travel now. You have no idea. You have absolutely no idea the chaos and the craziness that you survive, that you get through when it comes to traveling with kids.
Oh,
so
right.
The advice, right? The advice I think it's kind of twofold. The advice I give is enjoy it now while you can. The fact that you can sit on a seat, even if it's a cramped one, and watch movies for 8 hours and no one's going to bother you is pure luck. That's like a spa weekend for us young dads or dads of young families. And that was one. But then the flip side of that is when you do have kids and you do travel with kids, and when my son was younger, we took him all over the world. We took him to Taiwan at one point for a conference I was speaking at. And it gives you superpowers. Parenting gives you superpowers, right? Because you get through it. You survive the flight. You survive walking up and down the aisle of a plane for 9 hours just so that your son or daughter chills out. So the next time you go on a business flight and it's just you, it's a complete godsend. It's like, oh man, that's like your spa weekend away. So the advice was travel now while you can and enjoy it, and get all the sleep you can and enjoy it.
That is spot on. Yes, travel. Do all your traveling now before the kids come, because you're right. I did a couple of trips with the kids pre-COVID, and I feel like 75% of my cargo was all kid related. We needed a car seat. We needed the portable bed. And I had like one little bag of things for myself, but it was everything like me chugging these big objects around the airport. It was kind of a mess.
It's kind of crazy. And you get to security, and I was a road warrior for years, right? I spent a lot of my career on the road selling stuff. And, I'd always pride myself on being as efficient as possible through the security gate, right? Have your toiletries ready, your laptop ready, it all pops out, it's all neat, it's all tidy, you're done in one basket or one box thingy. When you're with kids, you just stop, you just don't care. You're like, look, we're going to take over this security line for the next 15 minutes, and it's going to be complete chaos. And anyone else on the line with parent or with kids is going to help you out. Anyone who doesn't have kids and is a business traveler is going to hate you. But you stop caring and you just take over that whole area for whatever long it takes. You're taking wheels off, buggies. Yeah, it's complete chaos, but you just have to get on with it. Now, I haven't done it yet with 2. Our daughter is 5 months old. We haven't done a trip with her yet. So I'm not looking forward to that. 1 was crazy enough. Have you done it with 2?
I have not done it with 2. No. Yeah. My most recent one is a COVID baby. He was born a year and a half ago. So it's just 1. But that was hard enough. So I can't imagine with 2. So it's gonna be fun. I'll tap into those superpowers as you mentioned, Luke.
Yeah. You'll basically increase your superpowers just to be able to do it with 2. And I think the trick is, unfortunately, it's the screen. We call the iPad kind of our third parent. If we need it, you just pull out the iPad, and that keeps them occupied for a couple of hours.
No shame that. Yeah, that's always the top of the checklist is, do we have Sesame Street shows downloaded on the iPad? It's a
Is the
must. Like,
iPad
that's
charged?
top priority one. um, Very neat. Hey, Luke, thanks so much for talking with us. Tell us about where we can find you. Where can people reach out to you? I think you have another upcoming show as well. If you want to plug that too, how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. So if you're watching this, you're probably watching it via LinkedIn, so you can find me pretty easily. But it's Luke, Luke Smaul, Smaul, as it's spelled there. I'm the only one spelled that way, I think, on the internet. So at least on LinkedIn, I'm the only one. So come find me, say hi, make the connection. Got a couple of live streams coming up. I'm on, I think Tuesday. Is it next Tuesday or Tuesday week? I think it's Tuesday week with the folks at Intellic or Industry 4.0 Solutions or 4.0 Solutions, Walker Reynolds and team doing a live stream there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Love that team.
Yeah, great team. I've done his live stream before. Him and I went toe to toe for a good hour on what's real and what's not real. He's a very pro technology guy. I'm a very, hey, the technology is cool, but there's outcomes you got to focus on kind of a guy. That's coming up. I've got a live stream with Clarify coming up in about a week's time as well. We'll get those details posted into the comments here, hopefully. And then, yeah, come find me on LinkedIn, and that's the place where I'm most active. And then if you're interested, I do offer a free masterclass. So if that little history lesson around digital transformation was compelling for your audience, then it's www.decodedtransformation.com. Free masterclass, takes about 15 minutes to go through, and it'll teach you that whole history and how you should think about transformation from your company's perspective.
Cool. All right. All right, Luke. Well, thanks so much for chatting today. Look forward to continuing the conversation on LinkedIn. And thanks. And I hope you have yourself a great day.
Great. Thanks, Manny.
See you later. All right. Hey, that was a great conversation with Luke. Definitely check him out on LinkedIn. Definitely follow him, connect with him on LinkedIn. He mentioned the masterclass on chakra.expert, I think is the website. Check it out. It's free. It'll take you 20 minutes to go through, but it's a great synopsis of some of the key themes that Luke has been talking about. And you can clearly see that Luke knows what he's talking about. I always like to talk to people that have been in the trenches, that have been doing technology for companies in a while, because they know like the real what happens on the ground floor as you're trying to roll out new technology, and that type of experience is hard to come by. So really thankful to Luke for joining us on the show and sharing that great experience, and definitely check him out on LinkedIn and check out chakra.expert. Okay, so for us, that's it for today. For us, feel free to leave a comment. Feel free to share this live broadcast. We're going to go live again on Thursday at roughly 10 a.m. again, where I want to be talking about one or two things. I haven't decided what the topic's going to be, but if you have something you want to particularly want me to chat about, let me know. But there's two big news that I'd like to talk about. One is John Deere's new autonomous tractor. That's really interesting. It's right up my alley. So we want to talk about what that looks like. What are some of the thoughts that come to mind there? I also want to talk about Palantir. The Palantir, is it Foundry cloud option? I just feel like Palantir is one of those kind of dark night vendors that is going to sneak up and, going to be a big player before we know it. So I want to kind of talk about that and see, how they might break into IoT or Industry 4.0. They've already have some clients there. So we just want to talk a little bit more about that and explore that space a little bit more. So thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll talk to you later this week. Goodbye.